welcome to Ditch the Nerves, a podcast where you keep calm and lead on. I am Madhurantika Maulik, your host for this episode of Ditch the Nerves. Today, we are honored to welcome Distinguished Toastmaster Steve Vear, MBE, Immediate Past District Director of Toastmasters District 91. Steve has celebrated for decades of volunteer leadership with the Samaritans, the South Premier Cricket League, and as magistrate in Hampshire, which also included some leadership responsibilities, contributions that led to his recognition as a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, or MBE, by the late Queen Elizabeth II in 2018 for voluntary service to Hampshire. Alongside this, Steve has a proven track record of over 15 years in senior operational management in IT and education sectors, and he's now pursuing his goal of becoming a barrister. Steve has built leadership resilience, embraced service, and led a powerful journey of impact. And today, he's here to share that journey with us. Welcome, Distinguished Toastmaster Steve Vear, to Ditch the Nerves.
Thank you very much, Madhu. Thank you very much indeed. Great to be here.
You joined Toastmasters in 2014. What was the story behind the how, the why?
I always say that I'm one of those strange people, one of those weird people that have always liked public speaking. But I never realised that I liked public speaking until one day that I turned up at a cricket cup final in Winchester with all the trophies ready to go, expecting my chairman to turn up to do the presentation and hand over the trophies in front of these 100 people that was on the cricket ground. He didn't turn up. He got his dates confused. So there was me with all these trophies in front of all these people, and I had to just get on and do the presentation. And then after that, I realised that I really did enjoy public speaking and oral communication. And so I sought out Toastmasters. I just simply did a Google search, which came up with my local club, which is Wessex Speakers in Winchester, and went along and was just blown away by the structure, the support, and really what Toastmasters stands for. So I always say that I use it as my personal gym of public speaking to try different techniques and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was really by accident that I discovered my love of public speaking, and I've been a member of Wessex Speakers ever since.
How fantastic! You never know when opportunities knock on our doors. But of course, it's up to us to grab that opportunity. Lovely.
Absolutely.
Since you joined Toastmasters, you have held almost every Toastmasters leadership role, from club president to program quality director and then the district director. Of these, which experience actually stood out to you as most impactful in shaping the leadership style that you chose, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, first of all, it's important to say that being district director when you're heading up a district is an incredible honour. It's a very busy role, but it is an incredible honour. However, the role that I would choose in answer to your question was actually when I became division director, because I was asked to take over as division director halfway through a programme year when Vanessa King was our district director. And I didn't really know much about the wider and deeper organisation. So as well as getting to know my team of area directors, I had to learn how governance works within Toastmasters. I was still on my own Toastmaster journey. I was kind of halfway through my DTM by that point. So I think that really shaped me in terms of giving me that foundation within Toastmasters to understand how it works, but also to really develop my skills in terms of motivating and leading volunteers. Because I think that's the other thing that we should never forget, that Toastmasters is one of the many voluntary organisations where it's all about service. There is no particular carrot. There's clearly no, monetary reward, and neither should there be. But that means that, motivating people and supporting people takes on a slightly different focus to what it might do in the workplace. So I think division director would be the one that really shaped me as a Toastmaster leader, I would say.
Yeah, actually, every role comes with its own learnings. Good to hear your experience as the division director. At work, you had already been in various senior management roles, and alongside you were doing already amazing voluntary work when you joined Toastmasters. But what was the new learning that you got from Toastmasters, learnings in leadership, which you were able to take it back to your roles outside Toastmasters?
Yeah, so I think that Toastmasters is an amazingly diverse organisation because I think of the pure number of people that you get connected with. And of course, organisations can be quite big, but within an organisation, your network or your sphere of influence is probably not necessarily as wide as it is within Toastmasters. So I think that I really got to focus in on how many different people do things differently, what their motivations are, what makes them tick. One thing that works for one member or one group within Toastmasters won't necessarily work for the others. So I think that actually, while I thought I had good flex in my leadership style, I think Toastmasters really did stretch me to make sure that I was doing that even more. And I think also thinking about it, there is a slight difference between supporting, motivating, and cheering on the leaders within your club versus the leaders that are in the district, because our roles and our accountabilities are really different. So constantly switching between those two things, I think, is also a challenge.
Well said, Steve. I think diversity is one of the strongest pillars of Toastmasters, and that really pushes us to learn a lot of new things.
Definitely.
In 2018, you were appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire, or the MBE, and it's one of the highest honors, specifically, of course, for your voluntary service. What does this recognition mean for you personally, and how did it impact your leadership journey, both inside and outside Toastmasters?
Well, I mean, the first question is a big one. Of course, I was absolutely blown away, and I had no idea about it. Okay, my sister I had no idea about it. My sister had secretly, 4 years prior to me receiving the award or being told I was getting the award from the Prime Minister, I knew nothing about it. And my sister had gone to lots of the organisation that I'm involved with to get references and to get support for the application, which of course she did. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Honours Committee will agree that you should get the award. And so I remember coming home to find an envelope on my desk at home. And I remember it was a yellow piece of paper. Why they send you a yellow letter, I don't know, but it was a yellow letter. And it was a communication confirming that the Prime Minister had passed my name to Her Majesty the Queen for appointment. And so after I stopped crying, which I mean, it was a very long time, I was completely overwhelmed by this. And that evening, I was also going to a cricket event, a cricket annual presentation dinner, and I wasn't allowed to tell anybody. So you can imagine that I'm at this event completely, just I was on a different planet, to be honest, Madhu. I was not with it at all. And so I was obviously, I contacted my family and then discovered my sister had done it. But, yes, it's an incredible honour. And it's amazing and so heartwarming, even now, how wonderful people react to it. They get a little bit overcome. If they don't know somebody with a national honour already, they say, oh, I don't know anybody with a MBE or an OBE, and I can't believe that I know you and we're friends. So it still amazes me how it affects other people as much as it feels good for me. In terms of my leadership journey within Toastmasters, first of all, I'd say that lots of people in Toastmasters was so gracious when it happened as well. There was an article that went onto the website, so Toastmasters was wonderful. But there's two things. One is I think it reminded me, because I felt it myself, of the real importance of recognition. We don't do these roles, and I certainly haven't been a volunteer for many years with a view to hoping that I would get an honour from the Queen. We do it in personal service, we do it for personal development, we do it in service to others. But it is important that no matter how small or large the recognition that we give, it's really, really important. And that was something that really came out for me at our Hall of Fame back in July of this year, when we honoured and presented lots of people with certificates and awards and thank yous for the work they did during the programme year that I was district director. So recognition is really, really important. And it was a good reminder to me when it happened to me what recognition means to others. So I think there's that. And then a very specific thing happened where Toastmasters in their monthly magazine wanted to run a article on leadership and wanted to focus on her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And so they asked me if I would write an article where I could also touch on the recognition that I received. So I am a published Toastmaster in the Toastmaster magazine, where I reflected on the leadership of Her Majesty the Queen. So that's very special as well.
Absolutely. I can only imagine the excitement and how overwhelming it must have been. But I must say, Steve, it is so, so well deserved. Congratulations. Maybe you're late, but congratulations again for this award. And
No,
thanks
thank
for
you very
sharing.
much indeed. Very welcome indeed. Thank you.
Very, very interesting and inspiring, Steve. But I'm sure while we love to hear the success stories, I'm sure there were a lot of challenges in your leadership roles in the path that you chose to tread. Would you be please able to share with our audience maybe a leadership moment in Toastmasters that made you say, okay, this is more work, maybe more difficult than I ever imagined this role to be? And then how did you respond to such situations?
Yeah. So I think this is a challenging question because of the variety of roles that I've held within Toastmasters. There have been lots of situations that have perhaps been more challenging than others that I wasn't expecting, and that it's for a variety of different reasons. I think one thing that I always try and encourage people to remember is that this is just Toastmasters. And what I mean by that, I don't mean that we shouldn't take it seriously. I don't mean that we shouldn't be proud of our organisation. And I don't mean that we shouldn't push ourselves. But there is life that happens beyond Toastmasters. You know, we have our responsibilities to our families, our responsibilities to our friends, but we also have a need as a part of society to, you know, pay our bills and to pay our mortgages and be able to live. And Toastmasters, while developing us and while being a wonderful organisation, doesn't pay our bills and doesn't pay our pension. So I think sometimes when things happen within Toastmasters and Toastmasters is so important to somebody, you know, that they, I think, expect the organisation to bend and be flexible in terms of what they need and what they want without necessarily seeing the bigger picture of what the organisation is trying to achieve. So I think what I'm trying to say there, Madhu, and probably not doing a very good job, is saying that there are so many different needs of members, and one person will think one thing, one person will think another. And I think the real challenge as a district leader is to find that sweet spot of balance. And I think if, to give you an example, during my year, first of all, it was a topic that was touched on when I was program quality director, and again when I was district director, the question of online speech contests and face-to-face speech contests. Now, personally speaking, as a member of Toastmasters, I think face-to-face contests are really strong, and I think it's a good thing that you can no longer be international, that you can no longer be world champion of public speaking unless you do face-to-face contests. I think as a member, I think that's really important. But of course, there are lots of remote members, and there are lots of online clubs who are really, really strong and play an important part of our organisation. So in those governance discussions, in those governance debates, in that need to try and balance the wishes and wants of the member while trying to balance the wider objective of the organisation can be really tough. And there's a tension that gets created. And I think as a Toastmaster leader, that is something that continually is a challenge to us all.
Yeah, earlier we talked about diversity in Toastmasters, and while it is a strongest pillar, it also brings a lot of challenges. But again, it's the challenges which makes us stronger leaders. So I think that's still very welcome.
Absolutely.
I would like to conclude our session with the last question, referring to one of the phrases that you always use, that leaders should avoid boiling the ocean by being specific and being determined. What would be that one piece of advice you would like to give to Toastmasters who are starting their Toastmasters journey, or specifically the Toastmasters leadership journey, to help them stay focused, authentic, and be more effective?
I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here, and I'm not going to take what you just said again, but I am going to start with that. So I am going to say that, yes, I do say on an ongoing basis to leaders, especially as volunteer leaders, whether it be in Toastmasters or be in other voluntary organisations, don't try and boil the ocean, because you'll never be able to. And that's because our time is limited, our energy is limited. And if you try and do everything, you'll never achieve it. So that's why I say, don't try and boil the ocean, be specific and be dogmatic about what you're trying to achieve. I think that's really important. But two very quick other things that I would say that I thought when you asked me this question is, as a new leader within Toastmasters, really do understand the basics of our organization in terms of how it's structured and how it works. And what I mean by that is, a new area director, this is a great example. It's a small example, but it's a really good example. A new area director really needs to know the difference between a club, an area, a division, a district, a region, and HQ. As Toastmasters, we joke when people get those confused, but learning those basics as a leader within Toastmasters, especially if you are a district leader, so going beyond the club, is really important. So really deepening your understanding of the organization and what it stands for and how big the organization is and how it works, I think it really sets you up for understanding things that get more complex the more senior you become, if that makes sense. But the other one, which is really personal to members, and I had this conversation only last week with somebody, which is, you have to remember your why and be true to yourself. So the question is, why did you come to Toastmasters in the first place? And is Toastmasters serving you in the way that you wanted it to? Are you giving enough time to your personal goals? For example, if somebody joined the organization to try and become the best speaker they could become and become the next world champion of public speaking, if they've spent the last year being an area director, then decided to go and be a division director, it means they can't chase their dream of being world champion for another 2 years. And is that really what they want to do? Now, that's not me trying to put people off taking on other responsibilities. I want for people listening to this podcast to be really clear about that. But I think there is a danger that people get a bit burnt out, or maybe even start resenting the fact that they have to go and do a role, or they've got to go to another meeting, or that sort of stuff, because they might have forgotten why they joined in the first place. And I think that's really important. And it's one of the reasons why, even when I was district director, I made a point of trying to go to my club as much as I could, and I still do. And I force myself to make sure that I book a speech every couple of meetings, because the reason I'm a member within Toastmasters is because I want to use it as a gym for public speaking. If I spend all of my time just in leadership doing no public speaking, then I'm not doing what the reason I joined in the first place. So I think members have to really think about that while going on their own leadership journey, because actually, don't forget, their goal might shift. It might started wanting to be world champion, but it might now be, actually, I want to be the next district director. And if your fundamental goal is shifted, that's fine. But if you have a goal that you still want to focus on that you're not giving time to, then you've got to be careful and get that balance right.
Absolutely. I think going back to always asking why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yes, absolutely.
And it can change over time. That's fine.
It definitely does.
Thank you so much, distinguished Toastmaster Steve Vear, for joining us today. And thank you to the audience for joining us for this inspiring conversation with Steve. His journey reminds us that leadership is about resilience, about service, and making an impact that lasts far beyond ourselves. Keep calm and ditch the nerves. Until next time. Thank you.